Sophia. We're the Spectrum Specters, also known as Team EMSO, which stands for Electromagnetic Spectrum Operations. And we've been given a problem by the DoD that revolves around EMSO and its lack of prioritization by the Air Force over the last 20 years. And throughout the semester, we've interviewed 75 plus subject matter experts and Air Force warfighters to come up with a solution that we're going to be talking about more throughout the presentation. So first, I would like to introduce the team. So this is Colleen, that's Catherine, that's Charlotte, and I'm Sophia. And our sponsor was Colonel Kosha, and our mentor was Colonel Petrina. So on the left, we have our original problem statement given to us by the Department of Defense. And throughout all our interviews, we've revised it to come up with the following, which is due to an increase in demand for EMSO capabilities, the EMS has become increasingly congested, and this, coupled with the fact that the Air Force has not been prioritizing EMSO, has led to a significant gap between us and our adversaries in terms of EMSO technology and integration, which has compromised our ability to fight and win within the EMS.
Thanks, Sophia. So for our original hypothesis, we explored the idea of a radio that could move along multiple frequency bands, one that could avoid adversary intervention and allow the Air Force to control use and deny access to the enemy. Oh, excuse me. Our final hypothesis couldn't be more different. EMS is not a priority, meaning it doesn't receive the necessary funding to make meaningful change. Additionally, the framing difficulties that the Air Force has in EMS modernization, coupled with the dangers of not doing so, explaining that is crucial in order to convey the appropriate urgency to senior decision makers. So we pivoted. We went from an advanced Saturn radio to exploring AI-enabled frequency hopping to the development of a special EMS cadre that would come and sweep through all of the Air Force's problems. And we were close, but it wasn't exactly right. But to give you some context, throughout our pivoting process, we began to notice a trend. When it came to asking the question, how do you define electromagnetic spectrum superiority, almost no one had the same answer. And in trying to understand that, we identified a few things that practically everyone did agree on. A critical need for personnel, for funding, and for knowledge, or PFK. The Air Force does not have the appropriate personnel to solve their problems within the EMS. They don't have the money to hire experts from the private sector or to rapidly develop solutions in-house. And finally, the knowledge gap is a very serious problem. The DoD has not paid attention to the EMS for the past 2 decades, the effects of which we are only just beginning to understand.
This is the first version of our, of our mission model canvas. It is a lot less in depth than our later versions, but we did begin by identifying our beneficiaries and our value propositions because these became the basis of our interviews. We did not include most of these in our later canvas because we did switch from a more technology focus to a more policy and personnel focus. So similarly, our first MVP did focus a lot more on technology. We thought we would employ a radio that would be able to move along frequencies without the need for humans to intervene. This was much too specific in focus, and also, as I mentioned, did focus too much on technology. And then this is our final version of our mission model canvas. As you can see, it's a lot more in-depth and also a lot more policy and personnel focused. The key activity section is most relevant to our final policy suggestion, and those were to implement effective and efficient training, to adapt personnel policy in order to retain experts and contract new ones, and to reallocate funding to have the ability to pay personnel more and to work on new technology solutions.
So who do we need buy-in and support from in order to support our MVP and have it be successful? We've ordered this diagram from the most vital at the top. We would need warfighters. We would win them over by instituting new training to show them how important EMS is in their plane's operations and warfighting capabilities. Then we would need to win over Congress by highlighting the problems with the current status of EMS technology and specifically emphasizing funding. Then senior decision makers, we would need to find new ways to show them how behind we are in the EMS specifically, and how this lapse could cause us to potentially be defeated. And then finally, action officers, and we need to educate them on new EMS technologies and specifically the new training programs in order to create buy-in so they can support these initiatives and our future training programs with warfighters. So this is our diagram of the cost flow, how we would like to fund it. It is split into 3 sections, training, incentives for personnel, and technology. For training, we would like to focus funding into in-person and virtual training systems. For personnel, we want to examine salary changes and extending contracts for EMS specialists specifically on a case-by-case basis. And for technology, we want to invest in open architecture EMS systems because they are updatable and they would save money in the long run. And also provide new funding for contracts in order to bridge the gaps for new EMS warfare and advancement.
So in terms of, in terms of improving PFK, the Air Force will need to draft the appropriate policy, request funding, and design effective training. We suggest that they consult with experts in the private sector and those in academia. And we feel that close partnering with Air Combat Command, the EMS Superiority Directorate, as well as the FAA and FCC stands to benefit everybody involved.
So this is our current recommendation. We want to implement a phased approach that ensures that current and future, or that EMS technical experts remain in the Air Force to develop current and future programs. And our policy implementation does follow the PFK structure that Colleen laid out earlier in the presentation. So under personnel recruitment and retention, we want to increase prioritization to lead to increased funding for technology, training, and personnel. We believe that this part is essential to the rest of the policy suggestions, as personnel are at the center of every solution. This would also introduce lateral entry and shorter active duty commitments. In terms of funding and monetary incentives, we do understand that the military is not going to be able to compete with the salary compensation of the commercial sector, but we do believe that some salary increase and bonus structure would increase retention and also show people that they are valued. The knowledge section comes through EMS training. We want to implement realistic training that will lead to more success in combat, both through general training and retraining with realistic EMS functionality, which will lead to a deeper understanding of EMS and more prioritization.
So how will we implement our MVPs? So this is our 3-year financial and operations timeline. In year 1, we specifically will emphasize demonstrating the criticality of EMS knowledge, specifically utilizing out-of-house media sources, since there are not many in-house Air Force specific knowledge, which will be worked on in year 2, and also offering contract extensions for EMS specialists currently in the area. Also developing new EMS technologies and developing EMS training programs. In year 2, we want to emphasize specifically deploying EMS training that we worked on in year 1, utilizing now in-house media, hiring motivated EMS personnel, and advocating for additional funding specifically with Congress. And then in year 3, we'll actually integrate the EMS open architecture technology into aircraft, software, and hardware, and then work with appropriate personnel to close the EMS gaps we still see. Questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions?